Recording?
Okay, 2, that's good. That is good.
The red light is red lighting.
Hey. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Are you good to go?
I am good to go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Editing Academy. I'm Darryl.
I'm Laura. Excellent clap.
That was a really
Very
good
well done.
It
Very
hurt.
powerful.
It's always a good sign.
Okay.
Laura, what is the year and what are the movies in total and then the ones, of course, that we're going to talk about today?
All right. These are the 2015 Best Picture nominees for movies that were released in 2014. And there were 8 total. The 4 we will be talking about today are American Sniper, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Imitation Game, and Theory of Everything. We will be talking next time about Birdman, Boyhood, Selma, and Whiplash.
All right. Other notables that came out that year, bear with me, there are a lot.
Okay.
It's, a lot of IPs, but... so what else came out that year? Into the Woods, Captain America the Winter Soldier, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, Interstellar, Transformers Age of Extinction, The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, Guardians of the Galaxy, Maleficent. Yes, that one.
Maleficent.
Thank you.
Yep.
X-Men Days of Future Past, Predestination, one that made my top 20 list, Fury, the tank movie, the Brad Pitt tank movie, Nightcrawler, Edge of Tomorrow, which is an awesome sci-fi movie, Inherent Vice, Ex Machina, The Maze Runner, The Wild, not Renee, but what's its one, and Gone Girl.
Reese Witherspoon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, so out of those and the 8 that were released, what are your guesses?
That is tough because there's a lot of IP in there,
There
but
are.
I think American Sniper is up there.
It is not.
It is not. I am surprised to hear that. Okay, so I'm going to go with, I think it was high in 2014 maybe, because I thought it was, got a lot of money. But
It may have been released later in the year, but...
Oh, that's true. Maybe I should think for next year. All right, so I'm going to go with a lot of the IP. So I'm going to go with Captain America.
No.
What?
I know.
All right, I'm going to go with The Hobbit.
Yes, that was number 2.
Okay, I am going to go with Transformers.
Yes, that was number 1.
Interesting.
$1.1 billion.
Okay.
For such a horrible movie.
Horrible movie. I'm going to go with Edge of Tomorrow.
Nope.
Wow, I'm just bailing on this. And I think the last one I kind of, oh shoot, there was another IP near the beginning and I can't remember what it was.
There was Amazing Spider-Man, Hunger
Spider-Man.
Games. Nope.
Okay, those are the ones that I had in
All
my
right.
head, so.
In order, Transformers Age of Extinction, 1.1 billion. Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies,
Yep.
962 million. Guardians of the Galaxy, 772.8 million. Maleficent, I don't know
I
why.
would have never guessed that one.
758 million.
Okay.
And then X-Men Days of Future Past, 748 million. So mostly IPs, but that one kind of snuck its way in there.
I'm super shocked by the ones that were not on there that I thought would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the other ones did very, very well.
Sure.
Just not the top for the year.
Big year at the movies, though.
Yeah, big. And I've seen all of them, some unfortunately. But,
Yes.
all right, shall we dive right in with American Sniper?
Let's do it. I have a order I would like to follow, if
Sure.
you don't mind, which
No.
is, yes, I'd like to start with American Sniper, but then I want to put Grand Budapest Hotel to the side.
Okay.
Because I think the 3 movies we have, American Sniper, Imitation Game, and Theory of Everything, have so many similarities.
Yeah, the biopics, basically.
Exactly. So do the biopics and then put Grand Budapest to the side.
Sounds fantastic to me.
Okay.
Okay, American Sniper, directed, co-produced by Clint Eastwood, written and executive produced by Jason Hall, based on the memoir of the same name by Chris Kyle, with Scott McEwen, Jim Delphisi. Stars Bradley Cooper, Sienna Miller, Luke Grimes, and Jake McDormand. It was nominated for Picture, Actor for Cooper, Adapted Screenplay, Film Editing, Sound Mixing. It did win for Sound Editing. Go.
Okay. So the summary is Navy Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle's pinpoint accuracy saves countless lives on the battlefield and turns him into a legend. Back home with his family, after 4 tours of duty, however, Chris finds that it is a war he can't leave behind.
Okay.
I think so, yep. So a couple of fun facts. First of all, this was actually optioned, the book was optioned by Bradley Cooper before Chris Kyle died.
Okay.
So he had one conversation with him over the phone and then had the rest of the negotiations and conversations with his family, his father and his wife. And he originally wanted to produce the movie and have it star Chris Pratt. But Chris Pratt at that point, I think would have been good and had the similarities of looks. Chris Pratt at that point was not a big enough actor, so Warner Brothers only gave him the money if Bradley Cooper would actually star in it. And originally Steven Spielberg was set to direct it, but they wouldn't give enough money for Spielberg, and so that's why it moved over to Eastwood, because Eastwood is known for bringing in a movie under budget on time.
Yep.
So that's how it got there. And just the other thing is obviously his physical transformation. Everybody was suspicious that Bradley Cooper was a very slight guy at the time, that he would be able to bulk up. And he did. He went from 185 to 225 pounds for the movie, but purposely did not work out a ton because Chris Kyle was a huge guy and had a lot of upper body muscles, but not a lot of muscle definition anywhere else. So he did a lot of weightlifting, and that was it.
Okay. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
I am going to start out by, and we occasionally do this, we always talk about looking at the movie versus any sort of accuracy in the movie.
Yep.
And with this one in particular, I think that's hugely important to differentiate in the beginning, because Kyle was a notorious liar. He has been proven so many times that multiple stories in his book were 100% not true.
Okay.
And a lot of his peers that knew him completely contradict the representation, that he was far more into killing than is presented. He was not tortured and tormented about his role.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
That's
very different, and I didn't know that, so that's helpful.
Yeah,
okay.
So I wanted to acknowledge all of that up front
Yeah.
for people who may know the backstory, and then we will look at this as a movie.
Right, we're putting all that to the side.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
That said, I am not a fan of this movie.
Okay.
I think this movie suffers from the story it really wants to tell. Is it a story about PTSD? Is it a story about his transformation? Is it a story about him trying to help? I mean, it is all of those things,
Yep.
but it is not clearly any one of those things. And I'll just start out heavy with this. We spend so much time with him in the field doing his job. We spend very little time with him at the end back home. We do not really get that a lot of that transformation of his then going to help people. It's minutes of the movie, and then he dies.
Yeah.
So the impact of his death is not nearly as impactful as it really could have been if they had developed that more. And I think because of that, this movie completely suffers.
I agree with you. So I don't mind this movie. I don't think it's a great picture. I don't think it should have been nominated. It was a entertaining couple of hours if you're not thinking about it with regard to the history or the reality of the story. I watched it and it was fine, and I wasn't dreading watching it again, and I watched it and it was fine again. What I do wonder with this movie is, would it have been a different movie if he had lived? Because it does feel like very short shift at the end of the movie with regard to, just what you were saying, not very much time with him at the end. It's like, what story did they want to tell? Would there have been more of an arc for him of how he did help these soldiers, or just because it ended so badly they want it cut off, pretty quickly? And would they have built him up to the hero that he was in this if he had lived? Did it have to be kind of an overbalanced movie of what a wonderful and almost, he definitely had flaws, certainly with his family, but they built him up to be such a wonderful person. Would that have happened if he had lived, if he was just a normal guy coming home from the war?
I think the ending of the movie obviously would have been vastly different, but I think it would have been a much more hopeful look at what he's done with his life. He's now going to go on and help all of these people. It would have been a much more uplifting movie. But that ending scene, once you know, you basically, it's just written out for you that he was killed, and then they cut to a very long end of the streets being lined with
Yeah.
people, and that had no impact on me because we got so little of him actually being that.
Yeah. It did a little bit more with me the first time I watched it because it was fairly close to when he had passed that this came out. And I do remember he really was a hero. He was celebrated in the streets. Randy Travis sang at his funeral. So it was a big deal when he passed away, and I remember it. But you didn't feel it in the story, to your point. I will say when it comes to so putting the story aside for a moment, when it comes to the movie itself, there was one super high and to me one super low that disqualified this as ever being considered a good movie.
I'm going to guess at what that was because it's talked about a lot online.
It should be.
So obviously fake baby.
The obviously fake baby. And I think that is disqualifying. I think if you have a baby that is turned enough to camera that, oh, let me take the doll off my breast and hand it to, and then I'm clearly wearing a camisole. So like I have a doll against my chest that I'm breastfeeding, except for I'm clothed and it's a baby doll. And then I hand it to, basically you see Bradley Cooper with his finger trying to waggle the little hand so it looks like it's moving. I think that disqualifies this movie as anything special because that's terrible. The one scene that I think was brilliant was when you look at him face on and he's looking at the TV and you hear all the battle noises.
Yep.
And you assume he is watching a war movie, and when you turn the camera, the TV is off and you realize all the battle noises in his head. I thought that was actually a brilliant scene.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to address, I'm a massive Clint Eastwood fan as far as his directing. Mm-hmm. Some of his movies, give or take, he's amazing in. But his directing, I always think he puts out a quality movie. Mm-hmm. This one, for some reason, things like that.
Yes, it was
a
terrible.
lot of the choices and the amount of time you're spending in these individual things, it just did not have the same Clint Eastwood quality that I expect and demand from him and have learned to expect.
Exactly.
So I think that was also part of it. I was like, what are you doing, Clint? Like, were you having a stroke while you were doing this? What was it about this? Because it almost at certain points, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying at certain point it feels like American propaganda.
Yes. And I think it wasn't, because they really did balance the fact that what he was doing out in his job at war was really taking a toll on his family and his family's life. And although he thought he was protecting his family from his job, he was really not protecting them and leaving them vulnerable emotionally. So I think even though it looked like propaganda on the surface, once you dug underneath, it really was a challenge. It was challenging that viewpoint. So I thought that was okay. What did you think about their love story, though? Because here's another point where it just fell down on the job.
Yeah, her character, Sierra's character, was pretty much one note. She's just trying to get her husband back, keep her family together, trying to get her husband back, keep her family together. And that's all her role was. There's no flushing out of her. Their dynamic itself is not flushed out in any way, shape, or form. We get this wonderful scene of when they meet.
Yes, that was very cute.
Absolutely. And it's a great beginning to a love story, and then you get a couple quick scenes of their developing.
Yep.
But the love story itself that would mean something at the end when he's coming back and she is struggling, we don't really get any sort of development of that.
Right.
We get no insight into that, really. So yeah, it became kind of pointless and meaningless.
He has gone mentally through the entire relationship. And there's a point where you don't know why she's hanging on to him. And I didn't know why she was hanging on to him.
No,
and
you don't buy it. You don't believe it.
You really don't. So yeah, I did not love that either. And I've seen Clint do a good love story. So I didn't like this.
One of the things I said about this is, first off, it's not a very well-rounded movie. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a stylized version of someone telling their own tale to make themselves look cool. Mm-hmm. And that's not what I feel this movie should have been.
Yeah.
It's not, look at all my trauma, look at how amazing I am. It should not have been that.
But for the fact that I'm sure that's what his memoir was, and
Probably.
having died while they were about to adapt it, there was no way to tell a different story.
Right.
You're not going to not turn him into a hero.
Yeah, that's valid.
You know, I agree with you that it's a flaw in the movie, but I think with the reality of what happened around him, I don't know how they changed that.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid. And I wonder, and I almost kind of hope that the movie would have been different if he hadn't died and Steven had directed it. I think it would have fleshed
Very
out a lot
different.
more of the. Steven can be sentimental, not Opie level sentimental, but
Yeah.
he can be very sentimental. So focusing on feelings, emotion, emotional motivation is something he does very well.
Yeah.
And I think that would have made this movie a better told story
Yes.
if they had focused on that more rather than just hard, cold action and facts.
I completely agree with you. I will say the performances were good for what they had to work with.
Sure.
I thought Bradley Cooper did a very good job,
And the doll was amazing.
I'm gonna hit you. And Sienna Miller, I thought actually did well with
Yeah.
what she had.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't a lot.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you,
sorry,
but no.
sorry, Clint.
Yeah, no.
Not for us.
Shall we quickly get away from this one and move on
Let's
to something?
move on. Can we jump over to Imitation Game instead?
Absolutely.
All right.
Imitation Game, directed by Morton Tydlum, Tyldum, apologies if I mispronounced, written by Graham Moore, based on the 1983 biography Alan Turing, The Enigma by Andrew Hodges, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Keira Knightley, Matthew Goode, Rory Kinnear, Charles Dance, and Mark Strong. Nominated for Picture, Director, Actor for Cumberbatch, Supporting for Keira, Adapted Screenplay, Film Editing, Original Score, Best Production Design, and it did win for Adapted Screenplay.
All right, so the summary. During World War II, the English mathematical genius Alan Turing tries to crack the German Enigma code with help from fellow mathematicians while attempting to come to terms with his troubled private life. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So a couple of fun facts. One is a personal fun fact. So I saw this originally in the theaters with my dad, who was a radio operator during the Korean War.
Okay.
And he intercepted Soviet messages.
Ooh.
And he said that what the woman said about knowing who is sending the different messages, he said he absolutely could tell which individual operator was sending the messages by how hard they hit the keys, the order in which, he said after you were there for several weeks, you knew which operators in the Soviet Union were actually sending which messages, even if you didn't know what was being said.
That's kind of
So
cool.
I thought that was kind of cool. So sending that out there. And then the other thing that I really liked was during the marketing promotion, they included crossword puzzles on their website. And if you could crack the crossword puzzle, you were allowed to see additional scenes, footage, any kind of additional content that was exclusive to the folks who could uncover the puzzles, which I think is quite clever.
Appeal to the puzzle crowd.
Exactly. Very clever.
Okay, I'm gonna. This kind of is true of all three of the biopics for me.
Yeah.
They kind of suffer from the story they're really trying to focus on and tell. They try to take on a little bit too much. That said, I think this movie does a far better job than American Sniper did, and I enjoy this movie. There are, according to multiple things that I read online for people who have read the book who actually knew him, that the portrayal that Cumberbatch did kind of puts him on the spectrum, which he was 100% not. He was actually a very funny, outgoing kind of person.
And I did not get that from the performance.
Not at all.
Yes, I agree.
So again, just focusing on the movie aspect of it, though, I do enjoy this movie. I like the development of it, but it does suffer from: is it about solving the Enigma machine, or is it about him and the tragedy and his brilliance? And the movie tries to tackle both, rightly so, because both are important.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really tell either of them fully.
I agree, and I will also say that a lot of the things that were in this movie were, same as you said for American Sniper, not exactly the way that they happened.
Yeah.
So for instance, yes, it's true that they did not always act on all of the code, all of the messages that they decoded, because they didn't want people to know that they had decoded those messages.
Right.
But it was not this group that was deciding that. That was happening at a much higher level of okay, we're going to save this town, but not that fleet. So that was
Okay.
definitely happening, but these folks had no say in any of that. And also, From what I had read, it was the group that was working together. And it was definitely Turing's ideas they were executing on, but there was never any kind of real harshness back and forth.
Do it my way, I'm in charge.
Exactly, and there were multiple machines that they were all building together. So.
The thing that I think that makes this movie work, even though it's taking on so much, is that at its core, it made a choice in the storytelling, and that the choice was going to be about friendships and relationships,
Yes.
which
Yep.
gives you an end. You get emotional motivation. You get tension just because of the nature of friendships overall. And by telling it as a relationship story, it becomes a richer, deeper film. American Sniper is stark, black and white, and there's no emotional connection, so it doesn't work as well. Whereas this one does, because it focuses on relationships and friendships.
I would agree with that, and also in American Sniper, you've got one center performance and then his wife, who's minor, and a few of the guys, but they don't really. I thought they were interchangeable, honestly. Yeah. Here, each person does have their distinct personality.
Yes.
You do have like the good-looking guy who is trying to take over. You've got the spy. You've got Mark Strong in his role versus the commander who's trying to break them up. So. You at least understood each of them and what different motivations that they had, and they were distinct characters.
Yes.
So you didn't see that in American Sniper. It wasn't just Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, it was not this was not the Benedict Cumberbatch show by any means. It
Yes.
was an ensemble. He just happened to be the person at the center of it all.
Exactly.
One of the things I didn't like, and I think there was something that makes the film suffer a little bit, is we obviously learn of his chemical castration and the horrible thing that ensued, but we never once see him engaging in any sort of like love or homosexual activity.
Exactly.
Which makes the castration at the end, while horrible, not as impactful. If we had even seen him like flirt with somebody or possibly hold a guy's hand or something to have that personality be shown, then that would have been more impactful. And I will keep hammering that, but you get what I'm saying?
No, I had that down as the same thing, is it does not show that part of his life. So for that to be like, there's two plots. They're trying to break the code and they're talking about his homosexuality at this time in England. And that we're pretty fully realized on one side of the plot and the other not at all. And it's interesting too because he had two lovely conversations, one with his friend, or the spy, but who basically said, he's like, yeah, I kind of guessed you were gay, but you're going to want to keep that on the QT because it's illegal and so be careful. Yeah. But during that conversation, Turing says, I've had male lovers. Where? Who are they? Exactly. And because you can barely interact with these humans who you're with together, how do you go about picking up a guy at a bar?
Correct.
Like, you don't even understand how this happens. And then the other piece with Keira Knightley also is, like, they could have explored what does that look like? Maybe they could be married and he could still explore what he wanted to on the side, but they never even tell us what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's sad.
They just have a quick conversation and she's like, yeah, I really don't care. We can totally make this work. I'm going to get something out of this. You're going to get something out of it.
I care about what you think. I don't care about the other stuff.
Yep.
And so two things bothered me about it. One huge part was that is they do not explore his if his his gay life is going to be such a piece of the show, the movie, let's see why that's important to him.
Yep.
And then the second piece that really bothered me was his breakup with Keira Knightley. Because basically he says, oh, I never cared for you. She immediately believes it, slaps him, and then they have a terrible working relationship from that point forward. He's been rude and nasty and terrible to her throughout the movie. So why is it in that moment she's like, oh, I'm done with you?
Yeah.
I accept what you were saying and I'm done with you. I thought that was way too convenient.
Yeah, if it's the straw that broke the camel's back moment, fine, but show us that.
Yes.
Because it does seem like it comes out of the blue. Because you're right, he has been treating her horribly. He's been treating everybody horribly.
Exactly. But she has accepted it to that point. So why then does she say, okay, we're done, but I'm still going to go to work? So
I think that's a good springboard to talk about Keira in her performance.
Okay.
I think she is the best part of this movie.
I think I actually really like Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as well. I think they're both the best parts.
She was the standout in Shining for me because we often don't see her play this kind of role where, because she's been in so many period pieces.
Yes.
And then she does even some more comedic ones or whatever. But this one was such a nuanced level of performance where she's completely standing up for herself the entire time, but also accepting of the fact that people are going to constantly question her.
Yes.
And it's such a nuanced performance that she's able to give, all the while with a smile on her face.
Yes. Yep.
That was awesome to me.
I thought she was brilliant. I agree with you. And I like the way that they interact. They had her parents as well, because she wanted to be a good and obedient daughter, because that's who you were at that time, but she still wanted to do what she wanted to do. So I loved the conversation between her and Benedict Cumberbatch when he's like saying some things that the parents are clearly overhearing, and she's just with tiny little eyebrow raises or tiny little like nods of the head. It's like, yes, you're on the right track. Keep saying those things.
Yeah.
And
the silent communication between the communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just minute on her part and brilliant.
Yep.
I agree. And she was not she's always a beautiful, gorgeous woman, don't get me wrong, but she was a little plainer and
Yeah.
a little
I think
more
purposely so.
soft-spoken. Oh, absolutely. And I like that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple flaws that I have with the movie.
Yeah.
And I understand some of the choices and why they made them. Making a movie about code-breaking you have a very high risk of this not being exciting.
Yes.
It's a lot of math. It's a lot of puzzle solving. We're not going to be the Da Vinci Code here, where everything's like over the top. So to make that more exciting, they kind of focused on it for a little bit and then pulled it back. Focused on it for a little bit and pulled it back.
Yeah.
And the choice that they made to have the quote unquote villain, because we don't see the Germans in any way, shape, or form. So the villain of the film is the person who's trying to break up the group, who's constantly coming in. And while I don't agree with that as a choice, I don't even know if that's historically accurate, if he was constantly trying to do that. To me, his constantly coming in on this thing they're all actively working on and trying to stop it became a hindrance, not a help.
Yeah, I agree with you. They had Nazis and they manufactured a bad guy.
Correct.
Yeah, they could have done something different. Yeah. I completely agree with you. The thing I struggled with is there was never a point where they tried to even explain to the audience how this machine would work.
Yeah.
Like, never. He is building a machine while everybody else is doing math problems, and they never explain, well, I think this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, a little bit of a dialogue dump
Yes.
here and there would have been helpful to understand the importance of the machine and how it works.
Yes.
I mean, we saw it, it looked cool, it did cool things.
Yeah, and kind of at the end you could see where they were plugging in, okay, if this is an S, then that is a Q.
Yeah.
You could understand it at the end, but by that time, he'd already built it.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
a little bit more about that would have been helpful.
I agree. There should have been some sort of explanation. Even in the process of building it, they could have been like, okay, so the reason we need to do this here is so that this will be able to do this thing. No, you can't do it that way. It needs to be done this way. Easy things that could have given us a little bit of information.
Yes. Yep, I totally agree. But ultimately very watchable, although this is the one I kind of dreaded rewatching the most because it's just so sad.
Yeah.
It's just such a sad story about a man who gave his life for his country, and his country, effed him over.
Yep. Yeah, I have nothing else.
I have nothing else.
All right, let's move on to the third one. The third biopic, Theory of Everything. Produced by Working Title Films, directed by James Marsh. It was adapted by Anthony McCartan from the 2007 memoir, Traveling to Infinity, My Life with Stephen Hawking by Jane Hawking. So it's basically, they base it on her telling of the relationship. Stars Eddie Redmayne, Felicity Jones, Charlie Cox, Emily Watson, Simon McBurney, Christian McKay, Harry Lloyd, and David Thewlis. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, which Redmayne won, Best Actress, Adapted Screenplay, and Original Score. Go with some stuff.
All right, the summary is Stephen Hawking gets unprecedented success in the field of physics despite being diagnosed with motor neuron disease at the age of 21. He defeats awful odds as his first wife, Jane, aids him loyally.
Yeah, it kind of misses some stuff, but yeah.
But fair. So Stephen Hawking and Jane gave their full blessing and support of this movie. And one of the things that Stephen Hawking lent was his voice is copyrighted.
Oh.
And cannot be used without his permission or without now the estate's permission. And so he lent the voice to the movie. He also loaned them his Companion of Honor medal, which you see him receiving at the end. And his signed thesis is actually his signed thesis that is a genuine prop in the movie. So he very much supported it. Not surprisingly, if you got some kind of sense of that in the movie, his second wife, he divorced in 2005 amidst accusation of her violent abuse towards him and bullying.
Wow.
So the woman that he ended up leaving Jane for, they got divorced.
Okay.
Can I start on this one?
Absolutely.
All right, so first of all, I guess I'm a little bit surprised. I was a little bit surprised to learn, because I learned as well that this was based off Jane's autobiography. So I thought that was interesting because it did seem like such a view from his perspective. But then again, in watching this movie, and there's lots of things I liked about it, there's lots of things I liked about the performances, but the overwhelming sense I came from this movie with, and I think it was not its intention, was Stephen Hawking was an asshole. He was an absolute selfish asshole, and I did not like him. And you would think that since he loaned his things to the movie, he wanted to be at least understood and liked in this movie.
Yep.
And he really came off as pretty awful. And I understand everything he has gone through, but there are so many pieces that I didn't understand his work. Looked like he kept flip-flopping on his view of God. There is a God, there isn't a God. They didn't try to tie that to the events that were happening in his life. And just Jane came out of this as I really felt bad for her. So I would be interested in your perspective because it really made me angry.
Okay. I have a slightly different perspective.
Okay.
I agree that you almost kind of, though, have to be paying real attention to get the fact that Stephen comes across as an asshole throughout this. I don't think it's as blatant
Really?
to me.
Okay.
My notes were, and I think because it was from her perspective, the movie comes across as far kinder representations of all of the people that are there than it would have had it been told from a different perspective. My note is that this is a very kind film. It glosses over a lot of the problems and issues. It does not dive deep into them. The portrayals of people are kind. You do see moments of his being kind to people. You see moments where he's being very selfish.
I did not see moments of his being kind.
Okay.
So I would like, where was he kind?
That was it. Like, even with all of the portrayals
Okay.
and everything that's happening, the movie comes across as a little bit warm and fuzzy to me.
The movie itself, yes, I agree with that. I guess the place where he was kind, if there was a place, was when he did allow the pastor to come into the family and help. So I think it was very late in the game, but I guess that could have been seen as a kindness.
My biggest problem with this movie, and I don't have a lot of notes, I loved this movie the first time I saw it, and I didn't know who Eddie Redmayne was, and I was like kind of discovering him at that point. And I really enjoyed the movie. I've been a Stephen Hawking fan for a while, so I liked the portrayal, knew nothing about it, don't know if it's historically accurate or not. And this time, I did not gravitate towards it as much as I did the first time. And I think because the movie is kind of soft and warm and fuzzy. It is kind of bland and things.
Yeah.
They don't really get to a lot of things where there was natural inherent conflict that could have been explored to give these characters depth, which they didn't do. So I didn't like it as much. My big problem with it, though, is very quickly he gets, in their courtship, he gets sick.
Right.
And there's a moment where he's trying to get rid of her.
Yeah.
But she stays through all of this. I didn't buy enough that they had fallen in love, or she had fallen that deeply in love to make that big of a sacrifice in her life. They didn't really explore that enough for me.
I agree with that, but I looked back on it, and maybe I'm a terrible person, but I was thinking of it as she thought he was going to live 2 years.
Oh.
And I think that this was somebody that she really did care deeply about and kind of didn't want him to die alone. And so I saw it as she was signing on for a very difficult 2 years, and she was still going to be a young woman when this was over. I don't know that she was signing on her life.
Yeah, because okay, That's a very kind way to look at it.
Yep.
And there is evidence to support that because everybody was telling him 6 months,
Yes.
a year, 2 at the maximum.
Right.
So I can see that and I can buy that. And if that's the case, then that would make a lot more sense to me. Otherwise, her sticking on for that long without seeing like some sort of moments of deep love. Like they had a great courtship.
Sure, but this is something you're signing on for.
Yeah.
And he did give her a pass
Yes.
of, I don't want you a part of this.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It was very kind, it was warm and fuzzy. The one thing I loved about this was Redmayne's performance.
Yeah,
I
he was
mean,
great.
the physicality of his limbs and the way he was sitting in the chair, and also just, he had a very impish grin that you could see why it was charming, and he was charming to women, and I think it was a Stephen Hawking smile. So I thought he was able to carry off so much with very few lines at the end. It was just his looks and his reactions to the words of the computer that he was doing. So I think he deserved the best actor.
Absolutely, Hawking is a very recognizable figure. He was constantly in the media. He was constantly on talk shows because he wanted to put himself out there. He didn't want the disease to slow him down or his work down in any way. And so having a character be that visible with such physical attributes and being able to not once be like, oh, he's not doing that right. Like, not once in the movie did you ever think he's acting that.
No.
So, absolutely, he totally deserved it because he was able to embody every aspect, and I was never once taken out by his performance.
Nope, I totally agree with you. I liked the way they introduced the man that ended up being James' husband, and I could see how that could have happened. But then when they introduced the woman who ended up being Stephen's second wife, I'm sure that's the reality of how it happened, but it just seemed so odd and abrupt.
Yeah, it was very quick.
It seemed
She's
like
there
he and Jane,
and then back.
Exactly, and it didn't seem like he and Jane were having any particular problems at that point. So to your point about being so kind and warm and fuzzy, like they weren't having any more problems than anybody else at that point. So, or than they ever were at that point. So why then? Why in that moment? Was it just somebody paying attention to him? And again, he was an asshole, and so therefore, some new shiny penny comes along, and you get excited about it. I don't know, but they didn't give us enough to understand his motivation.
No, there was a lot that was left unsaid in this movie.
Yes.
That was not developed, and I think that's one of the flaws of the movie is that there were moments where it could have been developed a little bit more. So as an audience member, we can kind of navigate this and not have to make all the leaps ourselves. But again, we talk about this all the time. We don't want to be hit over the head with something, but telling a richer, fuller story does make the story overall just better.
Yes.
And when you leave out certain things, it just suffers.
Yep, I completely agree. That said, didn't mind watching it again, and don't have a ton to say about it. It was what it was.
It was what it was.
Great performances.
I did not like it as much as I did the first time, but that's fine. Some movies are not meant for a rewatch. They're meant for a moment.
Exactly.
All
right, off to Grand Budapest.
Yes, I'm trying to find where the hell my notes are. There we go. Grand Budapest Hotel, written and directed by Wes Anderson, stars Ralph Fiennes, F. Murray Abraham, Matthew Almaric, Adrian Brody, William Dafoe, Jeff Goldblum, Harvey Keitel, Jude Law, Bill Murray, Edward Norton, Saoirse Ronan, Jason Schwartzman, Leah Seydoux, Tilda Swinton, Tom Wilkinson, Owen Wilson, and Tony Revolori. There's page 3. There we go. It was nominated for Picture, Director, Original Screenplay, Cinematography, Costume Design, Film Editing, Makeup and Hairstyling, Original Score, and Production Design. It did win for Film Editing, Makeup and Hairstyling, Score, and Production Design. Go with some stuff.
All right, so the summary is, a writer encounters the owner of an aging high-class hotel, and he tells him of his early years serving as the lobby boy in the hotel's glorious years under an exceptional concierge.
Accurate, misses a lot, but accurate.
I think it has to miss a lot.
Yeah. It's a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah, there's like a ton of fun facts about this one, so I just grabbed a few that I thought were the most fun. The most interesting one for me that I didn't know was everybody who was cast was the first choice, except for Tilda Swinton, because they had planned the role for Angela Lansbury to really have an older name kind of in the role. And then they went with Tilda Swinton, who is in the Wes Anderson library.
Yep.
So I thought she was wonderful in it. The Zubrowka, the city name, was named actually after a Polish brand of vodka, which I love. And then Saoirse Ronan came in and said, okay, so what accent are we going for? What do you want me to do? And Wes Anderson said, well, Ralph Fiennes is English, Jeff Goldblum's being Jeff Goldblum, so you're Irish, go for it. So everybody just talked the way they wanted to talk in this movie, which I found delightful.
I love, and I'm sorry, this is a real quick thing, but I love that in Wes Anderson movies, if you want to, you can completely pick it apart. Like, you can pick the accents of this apart entirely, but you don't need to or want to because it still makes sense. Like, he just can create a world where things that don't match completely work.
Yes. I will say at the upfront that I had a hard time with this movie because I am a huge Wes Anderson fan.
Me too.
And this is my favorite Wes Anderson movie. So I struggled in any way being critical about it. I've got lots of things that are my favorites. I've got a few picking nits later on, but just in general, this is beautiful and clever and whimsical and emotional, and there's unexpected moments.
Oh yeah.
And it is just so much fun, and every scene has attention to detail, and I love this movie. So you're gonna have to go with the flow because I could just wax
Gush
go
for
at
a
it.
while?
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's start out with some gushing things. Obviously, Wes Anderson has a very particular style.
Yes.
And while that style does vary slightly from movie to movie, it does not vary that much. You can tell within 30 seconds that you're watching a Wes Anderson movie at any point in the Wes Anderson movie. And I enjoy that because the number of films that he's been able to do and the number of stories he's been able to tell with his very particular sense of storytelling is amazing to me.
Yes, and they're all different, but they're all the same.
Correct.
Yes.
That said, one of the things that I love that he is able to do so incredibly well, the individual characters are almost caricatures. Almost.
But not quite.
Yes. They are so incredibly well flushed out, though, even people that are there for just a couple scenes. Like, you think of all of the different managers of the hotel when the Order of
The Secret Society of the Crossed Keys?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Each of them they're almost identical copies of each other, but they are still very distinct, and you get that within seconds.
Well, and I would say the same is true for the older and younger counterparts that he had of, when you have, who is it? Tom Wilkinson and Jude Law. I would never think to cast them as a younger and older version, and they were perfect. And the same thing with F. Murray Abraham and the actor who played Lobby Boy. You see them and you don't think it, but they're perfect.
Yep. One of the things we should acknowledge, if you have not seen this is I think a 3-level movie because the writer is telling the story of meeting the person who tells their story and we watch the story.
Yes, that's a great point. And to be able to keep all of that in very good order and understand exactly where you are at any moment is a gift too.
So the writing and the ability to tell this kind of story, super big strength of Wes. I think this is the only movie where he does like a level like that. Most of the other ones are very straightforward, go from here to there kind of tales. Moonrise Kingdom, Royal Tenenbaums.
There's another one, I can't think of the name of it, but there's another one that's like a tale being told. But yes, you're right. I think this is the one that's the most complicated with those layers.
And because of the way he frames things, they are almost like dioramas. When you have this beautifully set up scene, all this action that is happening, and then the camera will just shift just slightly, so you get a little bit of different focus, or it will follow on a dolly the entire time that something is happening. Like, he has a very particular style. He sets these things up very purposely, frames them, etc. But there's so much going on. Even some of the angles that he will choose. Think of the gun battle at the end where they're fighting across. And, to actually be there and see it is ridiculous because they're not really trying to hide.
They're like right here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you take that and flip it and show it from the ground to the ceiling, and then see them buying their cause, it becomes far more stylized. It becomes far more interesting to have that happen. So those moments where he's able to do those kind of things just give the story such depth.
Well, and another place where there is depth as well is, this is a story that a lot of people, myself included, say it is very whimsical, very comical, very charming, all of those things. Almost everyone has a sad ending in this movie. I mean, it has an emotional depth and circumstances that you're not expecting.
Yep.
And then when it kind of gut punches you a little bit, you know, like when they're on the train and he's like, "How did you get here, lobby boy?" And it's like, "Well, my entire family was killed in the war." It's like, "Oh, okay." And the same thing happens later when the author is asking, he's like, "Oh yes, my beautiful wife and child, they, you know, died of the flu." Like, "Oh, okay." You weren't expecting that, and it's sad, and it gut punches you.
The thing that I like that he does so well is he allows you in to focus on a particular story. The periphery things don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ultimately, the character that we focus on forever, the person running the Grand Budapest Hotel, dies tragically.
Oh yes.
And it's a one-off sentence. Well, what happened to him?
You don't even see it.
Yeah. What happened to him? Oh, they killed him. They took him out and shot him.
Yes.
And so it's not about him. It's about him during this moment. So that is a really good thing that he's able to do in his storytelling, is just focus on the moments that he's trying to tell the story, give you the information that you need, because you will ask the question, well, what happened to him? But the answer is just a one-off. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about.
Exactly. Nope, I agree. Along with that, there are some of those moments that are either moments or line readings that they just snap you to attention. Like, for instance, one was when Ray Fiennes is talking about the Tilda Swinton character and like all of her virtues, all these wonderful things, and she was great in the sack, or something like that. It's just very funny the way he says it. It's like, all of these wonderful things, and certainly not what you were expecting, certainly not what you were expecting of this character. And then the other great part is when he is hanging on to the cliff by his fingernails, and Lobby Boy comes and pushes the bad guy off the cliff, and he's like, "Holy shit," or whatever he says, "fuck," or something like that. And again, you're not expecting that, and it just turns the scene around, and it's very, very funny, very clever.
Another example of that is when he's first in prison. We haven't really heard him swear. We've just seen him be in command of the entire hotel, telling this person, that person. We've seen him go into the room for an affair with the older ladies. And then the very first sentence out of his mouth is just talking about someone being a rat bastard and like a little shit, and so you know that was
prison
in him.
Has changed him. Yes.
But it was in him all along. He was just not able to express that because of his function and role.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And every detail matters. You could watch this movie 100 times and see something new every time. Like, for instance, the Boy with Apple picture sitting in the back of reception, and that's a hugely expensive picture. If he wanted to sell that and really bring the hotel up to speed, he could. And the fact it's just hanging there means so much. Everything just means so much.
It does. It's just it's the attention to detail, but even more than the attention to detail, we've seen a lot of people do attention to detail to make a world rich. It's the attention to the detail in the storytelling.
Right, because it's not just that, oh, that's that picture, and oh, look at it hanging there. The picture is hanging there because he is sentimental, and it's what the picture means, and he will never sell it even if he needs the money. That's why it's there, not just because it's hanging there as set dressing.
And one of the other things, and this is true I think for most of his characters in most of his movies, everybody is so incredibly matter of fact.
Yes. Yes.
Like, it is hard. I mean, people show emotions, they have range, they have depth, but everybody is just so incredibly matter of fact that it baffles me every time how they can pull that off and still have me being like, keep going, keep going.
Well, just the prison break scene when they are leaping over the beds of the sleeping guys in their cots, it just cracks me up. It's like, okay, this is the next step that we must do.
It's just that particular outlook, a way of viewing life that he can get across, and we just dive into. People who love Wes Anderson love Wes Anderson.
Yes.
People that don't, absolutely don't. It's not for them. They can't get that particular stylized version of storytelling.
Yes.
And I understand. but it is totally for me.
Well, that was my con of this movie is if Wes Anderson is not your thing, you will not like this movie because it is the most Wes Anderson of any Wes Anderson, I think. And for me, that's a beautiful thing, and for you as well.
This one is not my favorite. Moonrise Kingdom is my personal favorite.
Moonrise Kingdom is a very close two.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, number one.
Yeah. He's one of those directors. Sometimes you can see a Steven Spielberg film and it takes you a little while to realize that it's a Steven Spielberg film because it can be confused slightly with different directors.
Yep.
But never with a Wes Anderson film. Instantly you know exactly what that is.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love this movie. I have really no flaws at all. So I can't really pick anything apart that much.
I honestly, my con is if you don't like Wes Anderson, and I do, so I can't say anything negative about it. I am with you.
All right. So let's see. Out of these four, I would really, honestly, only move the one forward, but I would be fine if, like, Imitation Game went forward as well. I don't mind it.
Of these four, I would only move Grand Budapest Hotel forward. I would be interested in your ranking of the other three because, again, I see them so similarly. I would probably go Imitation Game, Theory, and American Sniper.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry.
Exactly. Go to Mom.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
Exactly the order that I would put them in. And Imitation Game, Theory of Everything, they're kind of close, but Imitation Game, I think, because of it focusing on the relationships and the friendships, is just a better told story.
I agree completely.
Okay.
And Molly does too.
So, part 2, we'll figure out who actually won, make our decisions, give us your comments down below. Till next time.
Bye-bye.